Zelensky must be there. Trump wants to invite the Ukrainian president to a meeting with Putin. Drone attacks in Russia, fires and airport closures. Another attack on Kyiv from Belarus. Russian troops are being sent to Belarus. The AFU has deoccupied a settlement. And Putin is once again planning a new offensive on Kharkiv. Putin really is ill. A video has surfaced showing the Russian dictator feeling unwell. An international scandal. Slovak Prime Minister Fico compared Ukraine to grass. Hello, my name is Karina Klishun, and right now let's talk about the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. The situation at the front is very tense. Russian forces have advanced in the Serebryantski forestry area and in the territory of Nikanorovka. This is confirmed by data from the Deep State resource. And here are the shots showing the occupiers massively transferring equipment to the Zaporizhzhia direction.
No fewer than 15 tank transporters with tanks and 10 with other types of armored vehicles, more than 30 SBK trucks plus fuel tankers. This is the largest reinforcement in Zaporizhzhia in July and August.
Movements of tanks, APCs and weapons from the Berdyansk direction have also been recorded, as well as a large redeployment of units based in Crimea to the north of Donetsk region. Another vessel carrying military cargo has also entered the Mariupol port. In addition, the Russians are already close to semi-encircling Pokrovsk and the Menorad agglomeration. This was stated by military expert Bohdan Miroshnikov.
The situation around Rodinske remains volatile. Initially, there was a significant enemy breakthrough from the direction of Koptevo, advancing 4 to 5 kilometers. Then there were signs of minimal stabilization, but after that the enemy advanced again, this time to the area of the mine near Rodinske, bypassed Suvorova, captured Suketske, and the situation continues to deteriorate.
By the way, regarding Putin's demands concerning Donbas, experts state that Russia will attack Kharkiv if Ukraine withdraws from the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Analysts note that due to the more open terrain, these borders are difficult to defend, which would allow the Kremlin to easily launch another invasion in the Kharkiv region in the future. And just imagine, despite the enemy's significant advantages and the huge number of existing and future risks, our forces are not just holding on. Ukrainian soldiers managed to carry out successful operations. The armed forces of Ukraine have liberated and completely cleared the settlement of Beselovka in the Sumy region of Russian occupiers. This was confirmed by the General Staff. In addition, for the second day in a row, Ukraine's defense forces are counter-attacking and making gains in the Kupiansk direction. According to geolocated footage, the armed forces of Ukraine recently repelled enemy attacks and advanced southwest of Kondrashivka, north of Kupiansk. Our soldiers are strong and courageous, but even the bravest need our support. Don't hesitate to leave some kind words for Ukrainian soldiers under this video. Earlier, we already told you about the planned meeting between Trump and Putin on August 15th in Alaska. Now, there is information that Zelensky might also attend. At least this possibility is being considered at the White House, according to NBC News. Sources from the publication say that it is still unknown whether Zelensky will be invited, but it is absolutely possible. Well, for now, such possibilities are being considered. The Western press refers to its own sources. There are widespread reports about Putin's demands regarding Ukraine, which he will likely voice to Trump. Trump initially told European leaders that Russia was ready to leave Kherson and Zaporizhzhia in exchange for full control over Donbas. But as you can imagine, it's not that simple. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal.
Vitkov honestly admitted that the only proposal was a unilateral withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbas in exchange for a ceasefire. This proposal is significantly worse than the one Trump mentioned on Wednesday.
So, what do we have here? Putin is trying to avoid sanctions and gain at the negotiating table what he couldn't achieve on the battlefield, control over Donbas. It's obvious that once Putin's plan became clear, Zelensky and the European leaders immediately rejected it. Subsequently, the Ukrainian leader made the following statement.
Now, Putin wants to be forgiven for seizing Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions. We will not allow Ukraine to be divided because where there is a second attempt to split our country, there will be a third.
The big risk is that Trump might agree to Putin's terms. In the end, on the eve of the Trump-Putin meeting, the leaders of European countries made a joint statement. The essence of the statement is that substantive negotiations can only take place if there is a ceasefire or a reduction in the intensity of hostilities. The path to peace cannot be determined without Ukraine.
Joint statement of the leaders of European countries. The leaders reaffirmed their readiness to support the peace process through diplomacy, while continuing substantial military and financial assistance to Ukraine and maintaining sanctions pressure on Russia.
And what do you think? How will the meeting between Trump and Putin end? Russian troops are arriving in Belarus, supposedly for the Zapad 2025 exercises. Ukrainians already know that these so-called exercises in Belarus bode nothing good. Details in our report.
The first train carrying Russian troops and equipment has arrived in Belarus. Everything is by the book, loud statements and promises of strong friendship. But what is really behind this new wave of allied activity?
As of today, the military alliance between Russia and Belarus is an essential condition for the further development of our states. This is of great importance given the current threats. With the start of the special military operation, this became one of the top priorities, said a serviceman of the Russian armed forces.
The Belarusian Ministry of Defense immediately reported preparations have begun for the strategic exercises Zapad 2025, which are scheduled for September. They insist that the maneuvers are supposedly routine and take place every 2 years. But history teaches us it was precisely under the guise of exercises in 2021 that Russia moved its troops to the Ukrainian border and already at the beginning of 2022 launched a full-scale invasion.
The very first echelons with military equipment that have recently arrived in Belarus, they can be effectively used both for practicing coordination exercises and for the further significant buildup of strike forces and capabilities.
And although the official scenario of the exercises is still classified, its direction is obvious. After all, the playbook is the same, the scenario is the same: troop redeployment, creation of a strike force, preparation for future operations, all the things the aggressor used to start the large-scale war with Ukraine.
In this particular case, the essential coordination between Ukraine and our valued Western partners is absolutely necessary in order to effectively send a clear and unequivocal signal, not only to the Russian Federation, I think it is important to note, but also to Belarus, that it is completely unacceptable to use these military exercises as a deceptive cover for preparing aggressive offensive actions. After all, we understand that the Russians still have the temptation, for example, to open a northern front against Ukraine or to launch a special operation against, say, the Suwałki corridor. Obviously, that would involve Poland, that would involve Lithuania. There are various scenarios.
The key question remains the scale. So far, the official statements mention 12, 13 or 14,000 servicemen. However, according to the intelligence services of the Baltic states, up to 150,000 troops could be involved in the maneuvers. If these numbers are confirmed, it would be the largest concentration of troops on NATO's eastern flank in recent years.
The Russian Federation and Belarus will likely downplay the actual precise number of servicemen participating in these extensive military exercises as they have done in the past. Therefore, the risks will remain. But let's see to what extent, in this case, the preventive process will actually work. After all, we remember how even Kellogg himself came to visit Lukashenko. We also remember a number of statements and the current redeployment of those same German Eurofighter jets to Poland, and many other actions involving the redeployment of servicemen directly to NATO's eastern flank.
At the same time, other alarming steps are emerging. For example, in Belarus, a new airborne assault brigade is being formed. Where do you think? Of course, right at the Ukrainian border. This was announced by the commander of the Belarusian Special Operations Forces, Vadim Denisenko. According to him, the units are being stationed in the Gomel region, north of Chernihiv and Kyiv regions.
At the moment, this is, so to speak, the most tense direction, which keeps all of us on alert. That is why the decision was made to create a separate airborne assault brigade there. And as of today, we have already begun forming this brigade. One of the battalions has already been formed.
We are talking about the 37th Guards Airborne Assault Brigade. Its formation is part of a large-scale strengthening of the Belarusian army. New artillery and air defense missile units are also being created. And on top of that, the parliament is discussing rewriting the law on martial law to expand the powers of the president, the Security Council, and the Ministry of Defense.
Putin is currently relying on several on several significant pillars. The very first and foremost pillar is the deeply held belief that the Ukrainian response is an unusual anomaly and that such strong and widespread resistance will not occur in other European countries. The second assertion is that Article 5 of the NATO-Washington Treaty is a myth and that the alliance will not provide an adequate response. And the third crucial pillar is the deeply held belief that the People's Republic of China will significantly strengthen the geopolitical position of the Russian Federation in terms of both extensive economic and strategic political cooperation, since it is profoundly beneficial for China to effectively put the United States in a difficult and challenging bind. Thus, while the United States is fully preoccupied with the ongoing situations in Russia and the broader European continent, China will strategically resolve the complex and long-standing Taiwan issue to its own advantage.
Without a doubt, the Zapad 2025 exercises are a challenge not only to Ukraine, but to the entire region. Despite the fact that, according to the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service, there are currently no signs of a threat to our country, Kyiv is preparing for any outcome, as are its Western allies. Poland has already responded to the actions of Moscow and Minsk by announcing its own large-scale exercises, Iron Defender, with the participation of NATO allies. The question now is whether time will show if these exercises remain merely a show of force or become yet another round of escalation.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Meanwhile, friendly drones are making sure Russia doesn't forget about them.
What exactly is going on here, my friends? Oh my god. Bastards.
A drone strike has set fire to an oil refinery in Saratov, which is part of the Rosneft structure. The flames can be seen from kilometers away. Russians claim that air defense systems were supposedly operating and flashes were also visible in the sky. Ahead of the explosion, temporary restrictions were imposed on arrivals and departures at Saratov airport. It should also be noted that Russian social media channels reported sounds of explosions in at least Voronezh and Lipetsk. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has once again demonstrated his favor toward the Kremlin. Speaking about a meeting between Trump and Putin, he compared Ukraine to grass that suffers.
Do you remember the old African saying that I love to repeat? It doesn't matter whether elephants are fighting or mating, the grass always suffers. No matter how the elephants' negotiations end on August 15th, the grass will suffer. In this case, it's Ukraine.
Fico essentially blamed Ukraine, not Russia, for the war. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry criticized his statement. The Slovak Prime Minister still hasn't realized the dangers of flirting with Russia. He continues to allow himself openly offensive rhetoric towards Ukraine and the Ukrainian people who are fighting not only for themselves but also for Europe. However, everything has long been clear with Fico. And what do you think about such statements from the Slovak Prime Minister? Write your thoughts in the comments. Scenarios for ending the war between Russia and Ukraine are being actively discussed around the world. Analysts have predicted 5 likely scenarios, each with a set of conditions under which the two warring countries would cease hostilities. We will tell you about these scenarios.
A nightmare for Europe, an Afghanistan for Moscow, a freeze and territorial losses for Kyiv. Against the backdrop of progress in the negotiation process between Ukraine, the US and Russia, American media have predicted several possible scenarios for how events might unfold.
5 possible outcomes for ending the Russia-Ukraine war.
The Kremlin's goal in negotiations with Trump is to buy time, both regarding sanctions and military aid to Ukraine, as well as to establish personal contacts between Putin and the US president. The last thing Moscow is interested in during such negotiations and meetings right now is a ceasefire and an end to hostilities.
we can see that Putin backed down. He realized, or apparently economists explained to him, what it would mean essentially to lose the main source of income for the military budget. And this most likely threatens a complete economic collapse in the medium term. That's why Putin is now trying, let's say, to play many cards at once, deliberately shuffling the card of the Russian-Ukrainian war into the deck.
The least likely scenario, as rightly noted by American media, is Putin agreeing to an unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine.
Ukraine has expressed its readiness to accept the U.S. proposal for the immediate introduction of a temporary 30-day ceasefire, which may be extended by mutual agreement of the parties, provided it is accepted and simultaneously implemented by the Russian Federation.
Since at least March, the Russian dictator has refused the 30-day ceasefire proposed by the White House using various false pretexts and formulations.
My conversations with Putin are always very pleasant, very lively discussions. And then, that very same night, missiles are launched. I come home and tell the First Lady, you know, I spoke with Vladimir today, we had a wonderful conversation. And she's like, oh really? They just struck another city.
Following Putin's predictable refusal to cease hostilities, experts are discussing two diametrically opposed scenarios. The first scenario, a nightmare for Europe, will occur if Putin manages to outmaneuver Trump and the US leaves Ukraine one-on-one with Russia.
European leaders do not have a political mandate to enter the war inside Ukraine. Putin advances further. NATO cannot provide a unified response. This is a nightmare for Europe and the end of a sovereign Ukraine.
At this crossroads, the balance of power depends entirely on the position of the White House. After all, if military support for Ukraine continues, along with new significant sanctions against Russia and its allies, a catastrophe is predicted for Putin. The war with Ukraine will end for Moscow much worse than Afghanistan did.
The motherland is proud of you. The motherland thanks you. The motherland counts on you. This was the last night our soldiers spent on Afghan soil.
Massive Russian casualties at the front, a shortage of petrodollars, reduced income and spending on armaments, and a deepening economic crisis within the country. Kremlin strategists have already experienced something similar on the eve of the collapse of the USSR.
The Kremlin may face a moment when its resistance to the ordinary and minor inconveniences of reality, as well as to the economic hardships of its own people, becomes fatal for itself. A similar short-sighted political calculation ultimately led to the fruitless occupation of Afghanistan by the Soviets.
The most likely scenario, according to the media and experts, is the continuation of negotiations accompanied by ongoing hostilities at least until mid-autumn. The United States will continue its current course, applying pressure on Moscow and supporting Kyiv. And for now, Putin is temporarily satisfied with the current equation: the lives of tens of thousands of Russians in exchange for minimal advances across scorched Ukrainian land.
They will keep fighting the Russians as long as they have the opportunity until the rainy season begins. Well, that's actually around the end of October to the beginning of November, depending on the weather. And then they'll move on to political agreements along the line of demarcation. I genuinely think that they will be quite willing to compromise on their previously stated demands regarding, the 5 specific regions. But at the very same time, yes, indeed, until that particular point in time, they will undoubtedly make every conceivable and possible effort now to achieve as much as they possibly can on the battlefield, thereby solidifying their position.
At the same time, no progress towards peace is possible without further participation in negotiations by Ukraine and Europe. Putin's dream is a private deal with Trump, as a result of which the war will continue and Washington will turn its back on the European continent.
The whole world has long known that Putin is mentally unstable. But is that the only illness? Recently, news swept through Russia that Putin is ill. And it's all because of a published video where Putin is together with Lukashenko. In the video, it's clear that the Russian dictator looks, to put it mildly, not so great.
But allow me first to once again welcome Alexander Grigorievich. Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation and coming here.
So after that, as is typical for Russia, the local security services went after the cameraman who filmed this video, supposedly because he filmed Putin in an unflattering way. So now the FSB is hunting him down. This was reported by a Russian publication with a source in the Kremlin.
Apparently, this is being treated as a conspiracy. The cameraman deliberately filmed Vladimir Vladimirovich in the worst possible way, and then this footage was posted online, simply because there was no second take. The cameraman maliciously decided to make our president look bad, so that internal opponents would start spreading rumors about his health, and so that attitudes toward Vladimir Vladimirovich would change on the international stage. Such actions deserve the harshest punishment.
Classic Russia, what else can you say? Do you believe it was just an unflattering angle, or do you think Putin is actually ill? Please like this video to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon!